What is up, everybody? I am Taylor. Welcome to my channel, and this is my very first comic book creator interview. And yeah, I have the pleasure of interviewing Felipe Pan, who's a fantastic comic Triskele. We'll talk about pronunciation in a couple seconds. Issue number 2 just came on the just dropped this week, so if you get a chance, pick it up from Scout Comics. I think you can still order issue number 1, but we're gonna invite him on. We'll talk about all that, and we'll go from there. So please welcome Felipe Pan. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Oh, thanks for agreeing to do this, especially when I gave like somewhat critical thing about the ending of your first issue. I was like, oh, this is not going to end well.
But this is the only way to grow, right? It's my debut in the American market, in the North American market, and I look forward to getting to know what people think of my work, right?
I generally really like it, and I really like where it's going, and I like the atmospheric quality of it and all. We can talk about that. And then you said we were talking a little bit backstage. How did you get into comic book creation? We'll just start there, and then,
Yeah, well, I've always been a comic book reader and a comic book fan. But the thing is, I started out as a novelist, right? So about, 14 years ago, I decided to start writing books, write novels, especially for a middle grade / young adult audience, right?
Okay.
And I always thought of myself writing comics, but in the future, because I depended on someone else to make comics, right? I depended on an artist. Yeah. So I was kind of scared, having to collaborate with someone. I didn't know if I would get along with them. Yeah. I didn't know how the creative process would work, because sometimes writers can be quite selfish about what they're doing, right? About their craft.
I imagine. Well, it's your baby. You want to have ownership and control of how it all goes, and then at some point you have to give that up, right? So like,
So I always thought of myself writing comics in a distant future, actually. But then it turned out that 10 years later, I was like, you know what? I'm done with novels for a while. I need to take a break because I read more comics than novels, right? Per se.
Sure.
So I just decided, well, I think now would be a great timing for that. And I really have to thank Roy, right, whose pen name is Monaramis, for accepting to embark on this project, because he was. I found him during Comic-Con Experience, which is the Brazilian Comic-Con, right? Which happens every December. Yeah. So I was there looking for an artist for another project of mine, actually. And then I saw his art, and I was like, you know what? This would be fantastic, because the story of Triskele was actually a book. Was actually a middle grade book, right, before. So when I saw his art, I was like, this would be wonderful. Like this would be a truly fascinating visual journey into Celtic myths and mythology, right? So it would be perfect. And then I emailed him and I was like, so what's your schedule like? Would you be willing to work with it? And he was like, I love mythology. And so it all worked out. And I'm really grateful, because if he hadn't said yes, I might have given up, because I had been on the road, like writing novels for a while. I was tired. Yeah. And I was about to give up writing at all, right? I had spent like 10, 12 years making very little progress. So when I approached him and he said yes, and we started working on it, I was like, you know what? And then Scout picked up the book, and I'm really, really thankful, because everyone at Scout is just so fantastic. And
they seem great. I've never had a chance to really interact with them. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, Scout seems fantastic. Like, and I love a lot of the books they put out, and I love the fact that they give creators a shot, which is not something that, and it's all creator owned and controlled and stuff, from my understanding, and that's fantastic.
It is.
So how many novels have you written then? Part of my ignorance.
I have written and published 3 novels. Nice. Right, my 3rd one actually came out like a couple of days ago. Okay, it was due to come out in 2020, but because of the pandemic, it was delayed. There was a 2-year delay. So I have 3 novels published here in Brazil only. Okay. And I have had one graphic novel published, which is the one
I'm not allowed to talk about. Right?
Sure. You can talk about it. It's fine. And I have another one coming out in October this year with the same publisher here in Brazil, which is the story of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, right? Because this year marks the centennial of the discovery of his tomb. So the same artist that worked with me on Jaconda, whose name is Olavo Costa, is working with me on this project, and it's being colored by Mariane Guzmão, who has worked for the American market as well. And the next project is just an amazing piece of work. I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome. Now it seems when you write something, and I have a fairly small sample size, but I'm guessing you do a lot of research before when you're digging into books, right? Like, is that something you enjoy, or is that just comes naturally as part of the writing process for you? Or is like that type of content what you want to read, and that's why you write it, or how does it? Why?
I really enjoy the research part. I think it opens up like so many doors to your story. And and what happened was that I've been researching. I've been doing research on Celtic mythology for the last decade, right? And I've been doing research on Egyptology, and specifically on the time period of Akhenaten, of pharaohs Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, for about 8 years as well. So it's I feel like this is the best way in which you can avoid writer's block, for example, right? And this is something director Robert Eggers has said. Are you familiar with Robert Eggers?
I know Eggers. I know Dave Eggers, the writer, but I'm not sure about Robert Eggers, the director.
Robert Eggers directed the three movies, right? The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman.
Okay. I've seen Lighthouse. I'm awful with names too, so that's not.
I remember hearing him say that the best way to avoid writer's block is, just to do research on topics that you want to write about or topics that fascinate you. So, and I had been doing that before I heard him say it, and when he said it, I was like, he voiced what I couldn't, right? So
that seems to be it seems to make sense, because if you don't have an inroad, that maybe at least give you a path in, or at least something. At the very least, you learn something, even if it doesn't lead to something directly. More knowledge is never a bad thing. So
I agree.
Nice. No, you're in Brazil. You're 2 hours in the future. So how is life in 2 hours from now? Is it? The world's still going on here, as I can tell, which is good.
It is. Despite our very moronic president, it's still going on, right?
Well, we have a very moronic everything here. So we're. Do you write in Portuguese or English when you write, or like does it vary for project to project?
It varies. For Triskele, I wrote the first draft was in Portuguese because I was writing for a Brazilian artist, right? Although Monaramis speaks very good English. I felt more confident and I felt more comfortable writing in Portuguese. But then when we were sending the scripts to our editor, Andrea Molinari, right, who's a great guy. He wrote The Shepherd, right?
Oh, sure.
Which is published by Scout Comics as well. Fantastic editor, by the way. We really have so many things to thank him for. And he was the one who said, "Can you please try to send the scripts in English so that I can take a look at it and see how it." So I had to go over and translate all of the scripts, because before I had been writing the panel description in Portuguese, and then when I got to the dialogue, I was writing it in English.
Okay.
Then I went back and I translated all of the panel descriptions as well. Okay.
And now, when you do the panel descriptions, are you pretty detailed in it, or do you give the artist a fair amount of freedom, or is it like, how do you do it? I'm guessing you don't do it like Stan Lee style, since you're like, I've read your dialogue and it seems like you're very precise with dialogue and everything, and it's not.
Yeah, especially with dialogue. But I'm not anywhere near what Alan Moore does. It's like panel description.
So you don't describe everything in the room down to the. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
I don't do that. My panel descriptions tend to be around 2-3 lines, and if there's like a lot going on and a lot that I want to be in the panel, then it would take more. But I like to open up space for artists, because Monera Miz is such a creative force, right?
Yeah, if you guys have not had a chance to take a look at these books, I mean, they are ridiculous in a good way as far as the artwork and everything goes. They're stunning. Like, and I was talking, like, I'm usually pretty good at spotting whether or not something's digital, and I couldn't tell, and that's a compliment, because like usually digital stands out like a sore thumb to me, and I don't hate it by any means, but it's just something I usually spot, and like I couldn't tell with this. And this is he's got a great sense of like of cartooning and storytelling, and abstracting the characters into a kind of a fun way, but still with a sense of like gravitas and like these are not like sad stories, but they're not like giddy cartoony. I guess they're a fairy tale, and they have a dreamlike quality without being childlike, if that makes sense. So
and one way he does that, and I've complimented him so many times in person. I mean through the phone actually. And now I should say that as well. I love how he uses, or actually doesn't use, gutters. between panels.
Yeah,
because
that's part of why I thought
so fluid, right?
Yeah.
In many instances, right? Especially during Alex Stream that opens the story, but then during issues, I think 3, 4, I think from issue 4 onwards, he uses that technique more, and it's just so amazing, so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and he also is not when there are like panel borders and stuff, he's not married to them and stuff, and there's like overlapping, and that's why I was like, oh, maybe it is real, like not real, maybe it is traditionally painted. I'm like, it looks like so nice. How much research did it take to get into this particular book? I mean, you said you've been doing research for a while, and I'm guessing you have like a full Bible at this point set up for things, right?
I do. I think that Triskele is the result of about 35 books that I read about Celtic mythology, and I was lucky enough to be in Wales.
Yeah.
Back in 2015, there was this cultural contest run by the British Council here in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I got to be one of the winners. And I was sent to spend 2 weeks in Wales, right, in a city called Aberystwyth, and I got to speak to professors who were experts on Celtic mythology, right? And this was invaluable because so far until that point I had been reading a lot about it, but then I got to experience it as well and talk to people, and that was a turning point for the whole project, right? By then I didn't know it would turn out to be a graphic novel or a comic book.
Sure.
I was still thinking of I was still planning to write a novel actually.
Yeah.
But then it was it just added so much to the project, but you know, there has been years of research, right?
Yeah,
but I really like that part.
And the title Triskele that I'm going to pronounce poorly every time. Is that related to that symbol of the three? Is that like, and does that the trilogy or whatever idea play into this story as well? Like I've got without spoiling things, I've got a couple guesses to where I think some of the story might go, and I think it might. If you don't have to tell me if I read it wrong on the story elements, I'm not going to spoil for folks. But like, are there like trilogy or 3 elements that come into play in this?
Yeah, not really trilogy, but triads, right? So triads are extremely common in Celtic mythology, especially in Welsh mythology, right? Definitely. I can't say much because there's a reason behind the title. It's not just because it's a Celtic symbol. It is connected. It's deeply connected to the core story. But then, it's that symbol, which is also called Triskelion
that's how I did a little bit of trying to find out, and that's how I saw it more often.
Yeah, I didn't want to call it Triskelion because of the Marvel big space that huge like floating airport.
Yes, the shield thing or whatever.
The shield thing.
Yeah.
So that's called Triskelion. And I was like, I want it to be. It's not going to be unique because this is a word, right? But I thought it would sound better, and it's shorter as well. So, and then the logo is done by a very dear friend of mine called Arthur, right, in Portuguese, but Arthur in English. And I told him, like, can you please insert something that resembles
he got it on the S there. I see it. Yeah.
And then he did it. We tried so many. He offered me like so many options, but then when he hit this one, I was like, "This is my favorite. What do you think?" And he was like, "You know what? That's my favorite as well." I'm glad you said that because I
like it. It's legible and it sneaks it in there. But if you don't know what you're looking for, it's not going to detract from anything, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you have all of them. You have the volume 1. I'm guessing completely written at this point. Is it completely illustrated as well, or is it? Okay. Yeah. And coming out bi-monthly or monthly? I know it maybe like with paper shortages and stuff, that's probably hard to
do. Monthly. That's the initial plan. I mean, Scout. What Scout has been doing is they release issue 1. But then I think for issue 2 to come out, it usually takes 2 months, right?
Okay.
The readers can catch up with it.
Yeah.
And then they start releasing each issue within the same story arc monthly. Gotcha. And that's what's going to happen with us. So hopefully, if we have been, here in Brazil and also in the U.S., I know you guys have been facing paper shortage and supply shortage, but hopefully we'll have the whole story arc finished by November, right? I think the last issue should come out in November.
Oh, perfect! Just in time to get a collect edition out right by Christmas, and nice. And as far as influences on this, there's definitely the Arthurian legend that plays into it, and the one I'm guessing is also probably a fairly big influence on this. And if this is where you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, is the C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. Is that in there as well?
Yeah.
Okay, because they sort of seemed not the same story by any means, but if like there's some beats that were familiar to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, that like
the
nice.
C.S. Lewis, yeah, definitely, and also T.H. White.
T.H. White, the one, Future King, yeah,
gotcha. So that's one of my dearest books, right?
Okay.
The whole series of books. I just love the Sword in the Stone so much. Yeah. And the sequels too, but Sword in the Stone is just so captivating. One of the scenes from issue 1 is actually a tribute to I think the opening scene to the second book in the series, in which Gawain and his brothers they're trying to slay a unicorn, and it's such a brutal scene, and it's supposed to represent like how they're transitioning from kids into adulthood. But also it's supposed to have like this negative connotation to it. Yeah. And then there's a scene with the stag, right? Doing issue 1 where where they're kind of thinking of doing the same thing, right? But something happens and it leads to something else. But yeah, there are some touches of there are some tributes to T.H. White that I wanted to pay.
That's awesome. It's been many years since I've read any T.H. White, so like I'm more familiar with the Chronicles of Narnia stuff, and that because every couple of years I find myself just rereading them and trying to ignore some of the Christian allegory, but like
it's the same thing here. I'm not a huge fan of like every single one of the Chronicles, right? Yeah. But they're it's just wonderful. Like the work itself is just wonderful.
Yeah. And it's a nice young adult series that also I think adults can still enjoy, which is I think that you're also touching on some of that here, which is like kids can read this, but it doesn't feel like a kid's book.
That's what I was going for. I wanted to create an atmosphere in which would be inviting for kids or young adults, but it would also be a pleasant read for adults as well. So hopefully I can do it.
So far I'd say so you're spot on. Has anybody else in the audience read it? I know Daniel Karras said he enjoyed the first 2 and then read the third. I'm not sure if anybody else has had a chance to pick it up. They are still available on scout.com, I believe, or Scout Comics website. So you can still get them there. Check your LCS first. But I'm just wondering if anybody else has had a chance to pick them up. But you got to support your LCS this month.
Just want to give a shout out to Daniel, who's a friend of mine too. Thanks for watching.
Nice. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Thanks for jumping in. And it's and then you have like your other projects like Gioconda is the one that I've read that that's another one that I'm guessing is pretty heavily researched, and that's like a standalone graphic novel, right? Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. This one, the research was not as extensive as it has been for Triskele or the other work, which is called The Boy King. But yeah, we did some research. I wanted to really. I didn't want to get too deep into the story of Leonardo da Vinci or the Mona Lisa, but I wanted to have enough information so that I could make the book interesting for people who were looking for a romantic story, but also wanted to take something away from it. Yeah,
and it also still seems like it has a bit of a dreamlike quality to it. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's just like I'm guessing you enjoy some of that, like the.
Yeah, I do. Magical realism. I think that's how.
Yeah, I was gonna say like fable, but that's. Mm-hmm. And then the other one that I read a sample of seems like a whole totally different tonal shift. So that's another project you have in the works we don't have to talk about, but like. Do you consciously have these themes in mind when you're going it, or is it just kind of like a natural thing when you're working on it as far as it all goes?
Yeah, I'm always open to like telling new stories, and basically with The Boy King, right, this new project, what happened was that I had been doing research on ancient Egypt, and I just reached a point where I was like, okay, this is a story I want to write. Yeah. With Gioconda, the process was not like that. The idea actually came to me when I was visiting. There was this tour. I was with the school. I was with my students. Yeah. And then we were looking at it. They had replicas of Da Vinci's works, right? Okay. And then there were many replicas of the Mona Lisa. And then the story just came to me, right? Nice. But this is super rare. What happens is that I usually plan to write something. Yeah. So with Triskele, for example, back in 2012. I thought I want to write a story, a young adult, books, which is based on mythology. So which mythology can I use, right? I thought, well, I should use Brazilian mythology. But then at that time there were already 2 other Brazilian writers writing about Brazilian mythology, to the same target audience. And I was like, I'm not gonna do that. It's the same thing. And there are so many works being published about about Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Egyptian mythology. Rick Riordan has used.
He's kind of cornered that market. Yeah.
So I thought, well, what is one type of mythology that I think has been underexplored? Well, Celtic mythology, certainly not Arthurian mythology, because this one comes out very often, but Celtic mythology doesn't, especially because it's very murky, right? I mean, there are books, there are many books which tell tales, from the 1300s. Yeah. But apart from that, there's no canon to Celtic mythology per se.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's very challenging because there's no origin of the universe, or there's no chronological sequence of events that's really clear. So it's almost like a blank canvas.
Yeah,
you
it's
can
interesting.
And this is intimidating, but it's also very thrilling, right? It's just absolutely thrilling to get to work with that. So I thought, well, let me get that, because Celtic mythology is the backbone of Arthurian mythology as well. So I'm going to prepare this work based on Celtic mythology, and I'm gonna sprinkle some Arthurian myths in the middle, because so that it makes the work more relatable to readers. So whenever they read the name Arthur, they go, oh, okay, King Arthur. I know what they're saying. But then when they hear about Cuchulainn, who's this Irish champion, they might not be familiar with him.
Yes,
right?
Thank you for including some footnotes and stuff too. That's helpful, because
and I have to thank our editor Andrea for that, because he was the one who said, Felipe, you should really include those footnotes, because they're going to be really helpful to people. I was Monaramis and I, we were like hesitant at first. It was like, should we? But then it was for the best, of course. So listen to your editors, folks.
Yeah. Well, you don't overdo it either. You don't explain everything. Like there's the broken sword. That's one of the 3 swords of England or whatever. I had to go look up on my own, because I was like, what the hell is this? I know it's something. But you didn't like break that all down, so that was nice. There's enough,
and there's a reason to it. It's like the ones we don't break down initially. It's because the explanation is coming.
I figured it was also going to play a much bigger part of the story as it goes too. That's what, so
it will. In the first story arc, we'll get to see more of it.
Nice. You said you read more comics than books. Do you have like favorite comics of all time, or a favorite comic writer or artist, or?
Well,
I know, right on the spot with that one.
Yeah, it's always a very difficult question.
Yeah,
I think that the writers I enjoyed the most, like the writers who are currently working that I enjoyed the most, are Jeff Lemire.
Okay.
And well, the writer that I really enjoy is Jeff Lemire today, right? I think his works are just brilliant. I haven't come across any of his works that I didn't fully enjoy.
Yeah.
I think James Tynion IV is also like a powerhouse. He's been killing it with so many great titles. The Permanent of Truth is just amazing, and Wind is a great book as well.
Yeah. So
these guys are the ones I look up to.
Yeah, I could see some similarities between you and Lemire. I think.
Oh, that's amazing.
You both have this the magic realism sense about it, you and the stories and stuff, and they're still kind of grounded tales, but with fantastical elements that I think, and both work to try and capture the humanity of characters and really work on the characterization. So that's
another writer that I really enjoy is Mike Carey. He wrote one of my all-time favorite comic books, which is The Unwritten.
Okay.
I just love that series so much.
He's written something else, but I can't think of what the hell it is. I know the name, and I know I've read a lot of his stuff, but I just can't. I'm drawing a blank on it.
You mean the Unwritten?
Not The Unwritten. It's another. I think he wrote a Vertigo title for DC.
He wrote Lucifer.
That's what it was. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. he wrote a mean Lucifer, which is good. Yeah. I've not seen much by him lately.
I haven't either. I think he published another story with Peter Gross. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. I don't know if it's pronounced Gross or Gross. But he wrote another story with it. I think based on a Joel Hill tale. I think it's called The Doll House or something. I haven't read that one.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he has been up to too much, but The Unwritten was one of the best titles I read in a decade. So
Another writer that I see some similarities between, and maybe I'm stretching here, is I think your work is fairly similar tonally in places to like Ram V's less horrific stuff.
Oh yeah.
So like
I dig it as well. Yeah.
Like the Layla Star especially is where I can see some similarities. So yeah, I'm woefully ignorant. Are comics like pretty big in Brazil, or?
That's it depends on, like, if you compare the Brazilian market to the North American market, it's I mean, there is no comparison.
Okay.
Right. And we tend to consume, we have wonderful creators here.
Yeah.
We have a lot of artists who have been working for the North American market, like people working at Marvel and
Sure.
also DC as well. Scout also has many Brazilian artists, and now I'm not the only writer writing for Scout right now, right? In English as well. So we have wonderful creators. The thing is, comics are still not very accessible because we don't have that format of publishing issue by issue. We just sell the whole paperback edition, right?
Okay, and so that's sort of the tradition there, is to sell the one volume and done. So you've got one shot at it. You don't get the money every month to like keep going. Yeah, that's
And so it's very challenging because of that, right? And it's not just for comic books; it's for the book market as a whole. It's challenging, and for fantasy writers as well.
Yeah, I imagine it probably would be, especially if they expect everything all at once. I mean, I think that's culture in general, and like some of the streaming television services have kind of hurt things in a lot of ways in that regard. There's no patience anymore for anything.
Oh yeah.
But you know, and just like the general public, I think, has this kind of lack of understanding for how much time and effort just goes into some things that.
They think that,
like you said, and I did call you out a little bit on it, and that's a very minor thing. But like the letter D looks like the letter O, but like you guys are doing your own lettering and stuff on this.
Yeah,
we are. This serious effort.
Yeah, this is a budget problem, right? We didn't have the budget to pay for a professional letterer. Monaramis knows more lettering than I do, right? So he coached me into, he taught me some strategies, and Olavo Costa, who's the artist of Gioconda, also helped me a great deal to learn more about lettering. And I was like, okay, so let's do this together, right? And we're doing the best we can. So
it's 99% of the time is good. I just have the D's and the O's look very similar, and I was like, what is that word? And it struck me once, and like my thing with lettering is, I think if you notice it, then it's like you're not. It's like, oh, okay, I saw that. But otherwise, like it doesn't really detract from anything at all. And it's, I don't envy you. Like I can talk a big game, and I like to talk a lot of smack, but like I would never want to try it because I think it's like, I think lettering is very unheralded and very easy to mess up and very noticeable when it is messed up, but like it's not like a glamorous part of the comic creation.
No, again, you're right. It's not the most glamorous part, and it's just crucial, right? It's a pity that we didn't have the budget to afford a professional letterer, because that would have been the right thing to do, right? The best thing to do.
And I don't think you're doing a bad job any of these, so don't take it that way. I think it's awesome that you had the faith in your abilities enough to risk this all, and that's amazing, because like I don't know if you want to get into it, but like the way Scout works with some of these is like, this is not like the publisher doesn't pay for everything, right? You have to like figure out the funding and then go from there. Or
and this is not just Scout. If you go to Image web page or Dark Horse's main page, they all say the same on their submissions page, right? They all say we don't pay page rate.
I don't even know. I sort of assumed they were paying some of that. So
no, they don't. I mean, if you're Brian K. Vaughan,
sure, if there's
I don't know how that works, right? I assume or Jeff Lemire, I assume things work differently, right? But if you're starting, or if you're if you're still running your first projects, I guess the same rule applies to everyone, right?
Yeah.
Apart from Marvel and DC, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. But then Marvel and DC own everything, so there's there's that. Would you ever work on on a mainstream title, like on a Marvel or DC book, or is it just kind of not your bag?
I don't know if I would work like on a monthly series, because there are only two superheroes that I'm really into and that I know a lot about.
Sure.
Spider-Man and the Batman.
Oh, nice.
Um,
The little ones that are very easy to write for, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would be interested in writing for them monthly. Of course,
Sure.
I'm saying that right now because I have never been given it, the chance. But I've had ideas for graphic novels, the Batman and Spider-Man, and I've actually written a Batman graphic novel,
Nice.
and I'm really proud of the work, by the way. But I don't know. It must be so hard writing stories for a character that's been around, for 60, 70 years and still find something fresh. I really envy what, for example, writers like Scott Snyder have done with the whole Court of Owls thing. I know it's not exactly recent, right? But when he gave us that story, it was like, oh yeah, there's stuff that can be done that feels fresh and is part of the canon, but I don't envy that work.
Well, plus, I mean, the fan base is super. They don't have any expectations. They're not critical at all. They'll just sit there and take everything easily. No, yeah, yeah. You'd probably have to have a very thick skin to write on one of those two titles. But
oh yeah.
And like Tom
King. But those are two characters that I feel like I feel like know them, so I would be okay writing them. If they threw me a Captain America, I would have to do a lot of research into it.
You said you liked research, so there you go. Just gotta read every Captain America book ever, no problem.
If they threw me all of the comic books as well, then it would be okay.
I would imagine they would, but again, the way I imagine things working probably is not at all how they actually would work for something like that. But I would figure they would have some kind of Bible there for you ready to go. I'll be like, here, read this first. But
that's what I always thought. So hopefully it's that way, right?
So what about Spider-Man and Batman appealed to you then, or appeals to you, or like why did you like? Are they your favorite mainstream heroes?
I've been reading Spider-Man since I was like 8 years old.
Yeah,
I can't show you right now because I'm actually in a moving process, but I have like literally hundreds of comic books of Spider-Man. I've been with him through thick and thin.
Yeah.
I stopped my collection, I think when the series had reached Brand New Day or One More Day.
Okay.
That was when I was like, okay, I'm now they've lost me. But I have a lot of love for the character, and I appreciate the movies, and I've seen cartoons. I often pick up a story or two. I don't buy each issue that comes out. But I'm still in touch with him, and with the Batman, I feel like there's a lot of room for authors' creativity with the Batman, right? So it's like everybody who takes him on has a different approach, and they managed to make it fresh, and it's just he has the best gallery of villains, right? So it's
he's up there, like top one or two. Spider-Man might be number 2, but like I mean,
for me, Batman is number 1, has the best gallery of villains, and Spider-Man is the second one, right?
Yeah.
So I really like the villains that both of them have. So
and then I think honestly, in order to have a good superhero story, you do need a good villain. Because if there's no counterpart, then there's that. It took like even Marvel films forever to figure that one out, where they like they had threw some generic shit at the end of the movie. It's like that doesn't work too well. So, that back to your writing then. There was no real villain in Gioconda. I'm guessing there's villains in Triskele. When you're constructing a story, do you like think of the villain first or the hero first? Like, how do you like just do you have like a rough plot idea? Like, how do you find your way in? Like, do you start with a bad guy? Because that seems like that's maybe how I would do it. I don't know why, but that's maybe it's
I usually with Gioconda, I just had the idea of like, since it's a romantic story, and I was like, I thought about Francisco, the main character, and Elisa, and I thought that the problem they would have to solve was within themselves.
Okay,
right? They had to sort their own thoughts out.
Yeah.
With Triskele, I thought of the heroes, but at the same time, I thought of the villain.
Gotcha.
So it was like, okay, who is the villain of the story? He hasn't shown up yet. Yeah. The big guy, right? But yeah, and I needed to have like good motivations for him.
Yeah.
This is a lot of hard work, right?
I imagine, yeah.
Especially when you're working with a fantasy series, at least to me, right?
Yeah.
And something that involves the whole kingdom, for instance, and not just a personal goal. Like hopefully hopefully readers will like it.
I think so. I mean, at least I have so far. And like, I think you have to strike that balance of like a personal struggle with like the giant stakes and keep it like keep the scales going. So,
and also somehow mirror the main character's conflict with the villain's conflict, right? To make it interesting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because if it's just an evil bad guy, then that's kind of boring. So you need to have them to have their motivations as well. Yeah. Do you have a favorite genre, like when you're reading or collecting or anything, or is it just kind of because I know you have fantasy, you've got historical fiction, you've got romance that I've seen, and it sounds like another historical fantasy kind of element coming down the line. Like, I guess I know the research part and history, but like within that, are there like sci-fi, fantasy, or is it whatever? Like
fantasy and sci-fi are my thing. Although my all-time favorite writer, not comic book writer, but novelist, is didn't write any of them. He didn't write fantasy and he didn't write sci-fi, and that's Sir William Golding. That's my absolute favorite writer. He didn't write either, but fantasy and sci-fi, yeah, definitely. Those are my two favorite genres.
And now I have to read some William Golding. So you're sending me down these rabbit holes. So that's good.
Oh, maybe you had to read him for school because the Lord of the Flies, right? He wrote.
I did. Yeah, I read that, but that was about it. I went to a very Christian upbringing, and they tried not to let us read anything. Honestly, because when you read, you learn. You know, they really didn't. They didn't want any learning going on. They wanted controlled environment.
Lord of the Flies is just just a fantastic book, right? One of my favorites, and he has another book which is called The Inheritors, which is like he kind of imagines the contact of the very last family of Neanderthals with Homo sapiens, right?
Oh, gotcha.
The way he narrates the story is just so rich, and he was fantastic. Like his work is just timeless.
Well, there you go. Would you ever adapt it?
I have this dream, like of adapting this book in specific, right? Because Lord of the Flies, many people have tried adapting it. There's a movie based on it. I guess soon we might have another version of his book because it's such a famous title.
Yeah.
But with the Inheritors, I feel like this hasn't been explored as much as it should have, and this is something that's definitely on my bucket list.
Yeah, I mean, there was authors that played around with that sort of idea, like Clan of the Cave Bear back in the day and stuff.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's a different. I'm guessing it's a whole different story.
It's a different style. I've read Clan of the Cave Bears. Yeah. Great series of books as well. But there's a different touch to it. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned something earlier. You said you had your students. So I'm guessing. Pardon me, I didn't have a chance to. I don't think I saw your bio from you, sir. But that's okay. I'm winging all this.
I sent you my bio. That's true.
No, it's okay. So no, this is good. That we're all learning together. Are you teach? Then I'm guessing.
Yeah, I teach. I teach English. I've been an English as a second language teacher for 20 years now.
Oh wow. Okay. What all grade levels then, or is it a secondary language, or is it like do you teach it in a what environment do you teach in then?
I taught at a language school for 16 years.
Okay.
Then I was teaching students of all grade levels, and including adults, right?
Yeah.
But in 2018, I started working for an American school in São Paulo, right?
Okay.
And I've been working with 5th grade students who are mainly struggling with English. So my job is to help them out.
That's cool. Very cool. I don't envy. I'm the son of 2 teachers, and that I've heard stories. It's a noble profession. I have great respect for it. I never want to do it. Now, do you also speak French? Because I know there's some French in the Gioconda as well.
Yeah, I do speak a little French.
Okay.
I would say like intermediary level, and I speak a little Japanese as well.
Oh well, now you're just bragging, sir.
That's awesome. It's not even intermediary. No, but it's important because one of the things I forgot to mention is that I'm a huge fan of manga.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I don't know if you know it, but in Brazil, especially in São Paulo, we have like the biggest number of Japanese people outside of Japan.
Okay. No, I was not aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, during World War II, Brazil received a huge number of immigrants, right? People fleeing the war. So as a result, we have this very big number of Japanese people and Japanese descendants here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Two of my best buddies are Japanese descendants as well.
Yeah.
So we grew up watching like Sentai shows. Like before Power Rangers came out, Brazil was already importing Japanese shows, right?
That's awesome. Were they just great importing, or were they kind of did what the US tried to do and like?
No, they were just importing and dubbing, right?
That's awesome.
So, I grew up with them, with those Japanese shows, and then they started airing Japanese anime as well. So it was just kind of natural for me, and then I got really interested in speaking Japanese and trying to understand it because I wanted to read in Japanese. I didn't make it as far as I have made in French. French is easier. Sure. I'm not saying it's easy to learn. I'm just saying that if you're a Portuguese speaker, you might make progress faster than if you you might make progress with Japanese. It's much harder, right?
Yeah, Gustavo wants to know if you tend to write manga as well.
Oh yeah, that's my cousin.
Oh, nice.
I do intend to write manga. I have a story all planned out. I've written the 2 first chapters, and hopefully we'll be able to do it. It has this sort of like JRPG from the 90s vibe.
Nice.
I grew up playing them a lot. Yeah. I'm really fond of the memories I have playing those games. So I wanted to kind of like pay tribute to that as well and make a story based on it.
As long as there's giant spiky hair and over the top action with very cheesy romance.
Yeah, and very large swords. That's okay.
And very large other body parts too. But yeah, nice. Just culturally, do you think that the manga had an influence on like the way Brazilians comics are made and produced, or is it because like you said they're all kind of like because the manga now comes in like larger volumes as well? Do you think that had an effect on things there as far as why people don't like why monthlies aren't as big a thing there? Or
I don't know, because I think it predates that. Manga reached like this boom in the early 2000s here because we had been watching a lot of anime, but we hadn't been publishing manga very often, right? Yeah. And because animes had grown so popular, people said, you know what, let's start publishing like Dragon Ball and like there's one which was insanely big in Brazil, which is called Saint Seiya.
Okay.
And they decided to publish it as well. They had published Akira before, but Akira is a much shorter series, right?
Yeah, that's like that's manageable.
Yeah, and I think that they were all like, is this going to work? Yeah. But and then it did. But the thing is, before that, Marvel and DC titles were already compiling a bunch of issues together to form one, right? So it had been common practice here in Brazil before that.
Okay, well, gotcha. That makes sense. Nice. So your favorite now JRPGs and role playing. Are you still a gamer then, or not so much?
It's very hard to play games when you have two toddlers, right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
I work as a teacher and I have two.
And you're right. Jeez, yeah. How do you?
Last
time you slept?
I usually play like on my vacation breaks. Yeah. I love games. I haven't played JRPGs in a while. I kind of lost like my patience because it meant so much time. I still like them. I still like the plot. I still like characters, but I think it takes more time than I can actually give. Right?
They're not shallow. They're deep dives, and
But then I started playing like indie games and the stuff that Naughty Dog has been making. Yeah, it's just wonderful. Like The Last of Us is just a work of art, and I think that last year I came across a video game that kind of like switched, like blew my mind, which was Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice for I think it's for PS4 and Xbox. I think it's for all consoles, but then the sequel will only be available for the new Xbox, which is a pity because I'm kind of a Sony boy. But that game is just, despite the generic name, I don't like. I don't like the way it's titled. I think it's very misleading. Like Hellblade, you think it's something very generic. Yeah, it's such a mind-blowing experience. It's such a great game. So I really enjoy like playing these kinds of games. Right.
Okay. Now, do you think there's similarities between like video games and comic books?
I think there can be, right? I think
not first-person shooters or anything, but any of the more plot-driven games and stuff. I think
so. Like this game, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. it could be turned into a comic book, because the whole thing about this book is that it takes place, I think, in the 600s, and it's the story of this Celtic / Viking. She's Celtic, right? But her village was raided by Vikings, and they killed her boyfriend, her husband. So she goes on a quest to retrieve his soul, sort of like.
Nice.
But the thing is, she suffers from schizophrenia.
Okay.
So she, as a player, you have to play with your headphones on.
Yeah.
You hear voices all the time, and I think that would work fantastically on a comic book, right? Because the way panels are organized, or the way you can organize the dialogue, I think it would work really well.
I suppose, because you could probably control the way or lack of, if you wanted to really emphasize schizophrenia, you could have like multiple panels simultaneously that are.
Yeah. Not to mention not to mention the font size. You can play with that, just like I think Todd Klein does it with Delirium. Like fonts are all messed up and crazy, and it's just fascinating, right?
Yeah, and I can't remember the writer, but Riley Rossmo is the artist. Cowboy Ninja Viking. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's
I haven't seen this one.
It's a story where there's schizophrenic or characters that have multiple avatars, and like the way the page is set up is like there's a top, middle, and bottom, and it's all happening at the same time, but there's 3 characters in one physical body, all vying for control and stuff. It's pretty interesting. It doesn't always work, but I appreciate the experiment and the and playing around with the genre. So, do you mostly collect that? Which transition? Do you read digitally or physical media, or do you have a preference, or do you think both are viable, or whatever?
My preference is for physical media, but because I import a lot of things, I have to import a lot of things because I like to read in English, right? If I'm reading Brazilian authors, I want to read them in Portuguese. But if I'm reading North American, British, English-speaking authors, I want to read them. I want to read their original piece, right? Especially because I'm writing in English as well.
Yeah.
So I especially now that our currency is so devalued, I had to turn to ebooks, right? Because they're cheaper.
Yeah. Are there subscription models down there like we have in the US for like unlimited like Marvel and DC stuff, or is it all like per book there?
I think that I usually shop at Amazon, right? Or Comixology. I usually turn to them, right? And Kindle Unlimited has been somewhat helpful in that respect as well. For example, the whole Scott Snyder run on the Court of Owls, I was able to read through Kindle.
Nice. Yeah, that's nice because it can get very expensive no matter which way you do it. And like if you're reading a whole volume digitally, like it can go very quickly too. Like
and even so, I don't often buy issue per issue, right? I wait for the whole digital paperback edition to be published. So it's like I've been reading, for example, a Descender and Ascender by Jeff Lemire, Monstrous, and Once and Future. So I've been reading the TPBs, right?
Yeah, it depends on the series for me, but I've found that certain books definitely flow better that way, and I think certain creators write for the trade and not as well for the single volume. So it helps if you can catch them at their natural breaks in the story.
Mm-hmm. I feel like when I was writing Triskele, I wrote it as a TPB, right, as a trade paperback. I wasn't thinking of like I thought about the issue beat, but still I know that ultimately my main goal was like, so this is a story arc. I feel like this is where we should break. Sometimes it ends with I think that the only one that doesn't end with a powerful cliffhanger is the first issue, which for some people might be a problem. There's like, how come there's no real cliffhanger on the first issue? But I felt like, no, I know this is common practice, but I wanted to give a sense of who the characters were more than just jump into an action scene that wouldn't have any consequences later. But then for issues 2 through 6, it's like they all end in a
they all end in the Stay tuned.
Next month, right?
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge you found with like writing like a monthly or writing something that's broken up then like this? Is it the breaking it up into issues, or is it?
Yeah, for me, that was it. Yeah. In this case, in the case of Triskele, I had the whole roadmap because it was a novel first.
Sure.
So I had the whole structure. It was like, so this is where I want to break. This is where I can break. And then the process was a little easier. But with Harlem Sirens, this other project that you read about, then it's this was harder. This has been harder. It's like, where do I stop? So naturally, I have to go with the 20, 21, 22 page run.
Yeah.
So I should plan my stories based on that format. But it's challenging, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I imagine even just planning from page to page is challenging, just as far as like controlling when something is revealed. It might be maybe easier in a book like a publisher like Scout where they don't have in-page advertisements, but so you can you definitely know where the page breaks are coming in something like this, right? So
yeah. This is extremely helpful, right?
Yeah.
And we also have to think about the fact that if you are, let's say, if you're reading page 5, right, and you want a big reveal to come out, you should save it for a page that has an even number, right? Because then you will flip it, and then here it is. Otherwise, you spoil the surprise if it's done on an odd number page, right? So you have to think of that as well. It's part of the fact.
Have you changed? Like you wrote the novel first. Did you change anything from from the comic to the novel, or is it following the same?
No, I did. Starting with the main character, right? So his original name was Alec Dini.
Yeah.
But then I was like, because there was a whole background to his family, and I was like, I had to cut that all.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I don't have the budget for a letter. So I can't be thinking of a series that extends beyond that goes into 100 issues, right?
Yeah.
So I had to cut a lot of story elements without compromising the main plot and who the characters truly were. So in the original story, Alec had both his grandma and his grandpa alive.
Okay.
So I got rid of one of them because
you're brutal.
It was kind of redundant to the story. It wouldn't make that much of a difference. And there were some moments with his friends that I had to cut short or that I had to eliminate completely, and I had to change. And to make up for that, I changed the scene or two. This definitely happened. Yeah,
okay.
and the prologue and the epilogue were also discarded. So there was a whole, and this was a pity because this was something that I was really fond of. Yeah. I was really fond of the prologue and the epilogue. But I simply had to cut them away, and that whole storyline that connected these parts to the main story, which would ultimately lead to the climax of the whole series, it had to be rearranged. Gotcha. So this was the most challenging part.
Now, would you like to see this take off and become like a TV series or a movie at some point too?
Oh yeah, that's like this is. I think this is. I wouldn't say every writer's dream because you have some writers are very protective of their work, and I can totally see why.
Yeah.
But I would love to see something I wrote, being played by real actors and so many different people. Because when a movie is made or when a TV series is made, it's like there's just so many talented people working on it, and even if the end result is not as good as people expect it to be, the amount of work and the amount of hours and dedication that people put into it, it's just an amazing process, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like comics in a lot of ways, where there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that the end public never sees, and so it's easy for jackasses like me to critique everything when I'm just sitting here,
we all do that, right?
Yeah.
It's when I watch a movie that I don't particularly enjoy, I also do that. But then it's also nice to just step back and think, let's see how much process went to make this. Obviously, when we're dealing with multi-millionaire companies making crappy movies and crappy things, I think they don't get a pass.
Sure.
Because it's just so much money being poured into those projects. But when you have like smaller budget producers or directors or creators, I always try to think like, what were the challenges that they were facing? Because of course there were many, right?
Yeah, and the amount of effort and the sweat equity and everything that goes into stuff. I mean, and you're right. The bigger companies like Marvel, for instance, doesn't necessarily get a pass. That said, they do keep a lot of people employed, and they do, so definitely. But they need somebody to smack around Kevin Feige once in a while and be like, "No, just no, sir."
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And
okay.
if they can't take criticism, then I think the only way for them to get better and to make better content is by getting feedback and by getting by being criticized for some of the choices they make.
The feedback at that level is just financial.
Oh,
Honestly,
yeah. That's the thing, right? That's the thing. If they're not hurt financially, they won't change, right?
Because why would they? If they can keep pumping out things that people consume, there's no reason for them to improve. Yeah, that's nice. What other than Jeff Lemire, do you have any other like comics that you're creators that you're like reading currently that you like? I mean, I know you mentioned a few. I had touched on this before, but I just figured.
Yeah, James Tynion the Fourth. I would say, like as I said, Department of Truth is just such a great title. Have you been reading it?
I have, and I think that's another one where the artist and the writer really are in sync on things. Like
I
really
like that title. I'm really enjoying Wind, which his writing is.
I like him on Wind as well. Some of his other stuff I don't love as much. I really didn't care for his Batman, but
I haven't read his Batman. I haven't read his Batman.
His creator-owned stuff I tend to like more. Something's Killing the Children. I think you could tell it was planned as a short volume, and he didn't really think that out past that. And I think he's recovered from that, but I think there's a chunk in the middle where So, but yeah, Lemire is one of my favorites. I like even on a book that I didn't necessarily love at first. I can't remember the name of it even. His vampire. Have you read any of his vampire book that's out right now?
No, I haven't read the Vampire Story. No, I know the one you're talking.
Which it's pretty heavily influenced by Lord of the Flies. So
really?
Yeah,
it's right on my
alley. It's a very slow burn, and so I think he probably lost a little bit of the audience along the way because like the first 4 issues are just kind of ramping up. And
I'm down. I'll definitely check it out.
It's just when you're reading things in a monthly, the slow burn can be difficult from the end. So, but it's one of those. I think if you read in trades, if you like trades, I think the first trade you're going to dig on.
This was something that I was worrying about. I was like, I wasn't very sure if how readers would take issues 1 and 2. It's like, will they take it as a slow burn? Will they not? So this is something that I worried about. The response has been really good so far.
Yeah.
But this was my main worry, especially with issues 1 and 2. From issues 3 on.
Yeah, because they both do feel like now after issue 2, especially you feel like okay, now the adventure is going to really kick into high gear, and
this was on purpose.
But yeah, I understand why he did it and everything, and I think it was necessary. But yeah, I can see why he thought that.
Yeah. We were worried because we don't know how many readers are actually okay with it being a slow burn at first.
Yeah.
And how many readers would just be thrown off, right? But then you have to stick to what you want your story to be, right? You can't be at the mercy of all of just your readers. And and since the editors, right, Andrea and Michael Sanchez, our first editor as well, since they were like, you were very confident about the project, and they were like, no, this is good. Just go with it. So this gave us the confidence we needed, right? To just go like, yeah.
When do you have a timeline for when your next project, the Boy King, is coming up, or is that...
The Boy King is coming out in Brazil in hopefully October, right? I'm finishing the script, but the artist is already working on. Olavo is already working on the art, right? He's finished the 3 first chapters, and then we're working on the 4th chapter out of 5.
Yeah.
And then we have the colorist Mariana Guzman, who's also doing her part, and it comes out in October, and I'm really excited, and I really want to be able to sell this project to North American audience and the European audience, because I think that there's a great appeal. I think that Egyptology and Egyptomania is something real, right? A lot of people are crazy for all things Egyptian, and I think that Hollywood has done a very poor job saying ancient Egypt, and the first thing that comes to mind is Gods of Egypt. I don't know if you like that movie, but I just
not really. I thought of a word. I was thinking of the Scorpion King and then some of the
that too. I think the Mummy, like the first Mummy, not the first Mummy, like the original one, but the one with Brendan Fraser back in 1999.
Yeah, that
might have been the last like good movie or fun movie to watch. It
was fun. I wouldn't call it good, but it was fun. Yeah,
it was fun. It was fun. The Tom Cruise one, I didn't care much for it.
No.
So I feel like it has been underrepresented.
Well,
and
tried in Moon Knight. I don't know if you've seen that yet. But...
Oh yeah, the Moon Knight. Yeah, the Moon Knight. That's right. That's right. They do a good job with Moon Knight.
Okay.
I like the mythological elements. I thought they were okay.
I thought it should have been 2 seasons. I think they tried to cram too much into one for that one. But
that's true.
Yeah. But I think the Egyptology part, it was interesting, and I think
it was.
That was my problem with that. Is like, oh, this is really interesting. They should stick with it. Oh nope, and we're off. Like,
so. Yeah. It's like every time they ran into something which was like, oh, okay, cool. So what are you going to explore that god a little more? And then they got to another story beat, and I was like, oh, but this looked so awesome, and you could really explore that part. The whole part of the field of reeds had so much potential, and they had to rush through it. So it was like,
that's that. Either they need to like get over the fact that not everything needs just 6 episodes, or they just need to like. Yeah.
And I imagine it must be hard to keep someone like Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, who are like top tier actors, working on a project like that. It must be hard. I'm just guessing.
I do think a lot of that filming probably happened during COVID and stuff too, so that probably made it trickier as well. But Moon Knight's one of my favorite characters of all time.
Oh, okay. So for
like,
you,
it's like, oh, you're messing with my baby, like it's why it's one of those things that like I feel I get. There's a comic that came out this month. Where'd it go? Rogues Gallery, that deals with toxic fan bases and like how like people that consume the product think they have ownership over the characters.
Oh,
and so it's an interesting idea. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, like you're messing up Moon Knight, like so. But it's an interesting idea.
I'm like that with every Star Wars property, right? Actually, when you mentioned like, would you write for Marvel or DC?
Oh, Star Wars.
I was focused on Marvel superheroes, but like Star Wars is definitely something I would like to write for. Like,
please, if you do, please tell me you're done with the Skywalkers and would have something else in a different corner of the
universe. No, something else. I've already written like some scripts of a plot of a story where Skywalkers are really not the focus. Like,
nice. What's your favorite Star Wars either movie or comic or whatever of all time? Then
A New Hope. It's New Hope for me is just. Yeah. It's I don't know if there's such a thing as the perfect movie, but I think it's darn close.
Yeah, I love it. It was it's the first movie I saw with my in a theater environment, and not when it first came out, but like we have drive-in movies here. I'm not sure if that's a thing in Brazil or a little bit.
No, not anymore. We used to
not anymore here either, sadly, because they were awesome. But like I saw it was a double feature. I was like 7 years old. My dad took me to go see A New Hope and Conan the Barbarian. So like it was I got some lightsaber fights and then some boobies and Conan O'Brien and Conan the Barbarian. Yeah.
And in terms of TV shows, like based on the Star Wars universe, The Mandalorian, especially season 1.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Season 1 was great because it was a Western that they just people were thinking it was a Star Wars story, which is what Star Wars stole from everybody, which is awesome. Yeah. Like Lucas wasn't shy about it. He's like, no.
It was always very open about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the early like 1940s serials and stuff that he grew up watching, he took what he loved and made it into a thing, which is so nice. Well, listen, we're getting about an hour. I know it's like 10:30 your time. I don't want to keep you. Do you have anything else that you want to plug or talk about, or what do you have coming up? I know Triskele just came out this week. Next issue drops in about a month.
Yeah. I think it drops on August 17th. Okay. If I'm not mistaken. And then all issues should follow the regular schedule. They will be released monthly. So I invite everyone to join us, right? To get to read Triskele. I hope you guys like it. There's a lot of thought put into it, a lot of research. Lemire is a fantastic artist. He's such a creative powerhouse, and I really hope you enjoy our work and support our work, and not only my work and Taylor's work as well, and every creator's work, every independent creator's work, because it's tough out there. It's
I mean, without independent creators, all we're getting is more Thor: Love and Thunder. So you guys have to support all the small, not small, but the indies. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it, Felipe. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Taylor.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody. Have a great night. I'm not even going to end this with my normal "Don't be a dick" because you all know this already. So I'll talk to you soon. And give Felipe a follow. He's on Instagram, and I don't know if he creates YouTube content, but his socials are down below. So give him a follow and say hi on there. And then go buy the books, people. Like seriously. All right,
Thanks, man.
have a good
Really
night.
appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.